Welcome there, music lovers, and to another episode of Elevation. And this week we want to go back to the 90s again and look at some of the girl groups that blossomed out of this wonderful musical decade. Now, girls groups has always been a staple in soul music. If we decide to go back to the 60s, we'll find some great girl groups, that dominated the charts during that era. Diana Ross and the Supremes, Martha Reeves and the Vandellas, the Marvelettes, the Velvelettes, just to name a few from that era, mostly Motown, doing their thing with the groups. But then even the 70s gave us some great girls groups as well. As we had the Emotions, the Jones Girls, the Pointer Sisters, and Sister Sledge, they were all strong during the decade of the 70s. But by the time we got to the 80s, just like the men, the 80s became a decade of the individual. And so the group phenomena had just went into the background as we had great, women singers that were leading the way in soul music. Artists like Whitney Houston, Anita Baker, Patti LaBelle, Phyllis Hyman, Tina Marie, just to name a few, Sade, just to name a few of the artists that were so strong during that decade. But by the time we got to 1990, we had one group that came out that just changed the dynamic again and got us back into the girl group, and that was the artist named En Vogue. When they hit the scene hard, and they did it so well that every record label and artist and producer were looking for the next En Vogue, the next girls group that they could put in on the radio and follow the trend, because the music industry is definitely about trends and about copycats. And we saw a lot of girls groups that popped up, after En Vogue did their thing. We had groups like Vibe, Shades, Black Girl, For Real, which I really love. Those four singing ladies, they really could do it. And another, great four singing ladies was the answer to Drew Hill, which was Pure Soul. They were on the same, production company, and Pure Soul really had some great vocals and some great singers. And then we also had a lot of groups that were being put out by individual labels and artists that we knew. Stuff like One of the Girls, which was put out by Gerald Levert. We had the group Black, which was put out by Left Eye Lopez, and Ex-Girlfriend. That was what's the guy's Full Force. We had Oaktown 357, which was MC Hammer. We also had Motown coming back into the fray, and they put out the group The Good Girls. And that was them trying to recapture the Diana Ross and Supremes, feel and the look. And then lastly, we also had the group that came in, but if we were to number them, they would be at number 11. They were just under our top 10, countdown list. And that was the group Cut Close, which was put out by Keith Sweat. They had the big hit song I Like, along with a little other, songs on the album. And so they made a little impact at radio and our consciousness, but it was just bubbling under, just like all the other groups that were mentioned before that were great singers and had some great songs, sold a lot of records. But they weren't enough to make our top 10 list. Our top 10 list is very strong with some very powerful singing ladies. And so without any further delay, we're going to get into our top 10 female soul groups of the 90s list. And starting our countdown at number 10 are the two ladies out of New York, otherwise known as Changing Faces. Now, Changing Faces started out as background singers. They were background singers to the artist named Sybil, who had some R&B and disco hits of the decade, most notably the song Don't Make Me Over. That was the remake that she did, and And doing background vocals for Sybil gave them a taste of the music industry and a taste of wanting to go, out front. And it was them singing the background vocals for Sybil is how they got noticed, particularly by the label that signed them, Atlantic Records, who put out their first album and connected them with one of the hottest producers, writers of the era and of the time, Mr. Robert Kelly, otherwise known as R. Kelly. Now, you can say a lot of things about R. Kelly that you can either like or dislike about him, but one thing is for sure is that over his career, he is shown to be a very strong songwriter, and he's able to make songs that match the artist that he's writing the music for, whether he's writing songs for Maxwell or whether it was Michael Jackson, or in this case, the group Changing Faces. He did a good job with it. And so they came out the box with the first song, Stroke You Up, which actually featured R. Kelly on the song to help draw you into the group. And that song shot up to the top of the charts, as well as their second single from the album, Fooling Around, also went to the top of the R&B charts. And they rode those two singles all the way to having a gold record with their first album. The second album also went gold, and it actually had their biggest hit, which was the song Get Out, which was also written by R. Kelly. And it actually kept them around, and that was their biggest success. They eventually did a third album that wasn't as strong as the first two, but they gave us some really strong mid-tempo type ballads during that era and during this time of the 90s, which is the reason why coming in at number 10 is the group Changing Faces. And coming in at number 9 are the Ladies out of Las Vegas, otherwise known as 702. Now, 702 as a number is actually the area code where they live in Las Vegas. It's the area code for Las Vegas, which is what they named themselves, with the two twins, and they had other female lead singers with the group, but the twins had been there the whole time with the group. And so eventually they were singers that were going to be put out by Michael Bivins as he started to build his producing empire, starting with Boyz II Men, Another Bad Creation. And he was able to put together a song with a group that he put together, Subway, and then 702 with a song called Little Game That We Play. A little ditty, a nice little song between two young groups, male and female, going back and forth singing to each other. And it wasn't so much that the song was medium up the charts, but what it did was it introduced the soul audience to both groups. And so what it did was 702 was able to go back in the studio and work on their individual first album. And the first album featured one of my favorite songs by them, a powerful song featuring, Missy Elliott on it. It's a song called Stilo, which went all the way to the top of the charts. And then the word Stilo also became a part of our urban lexicon. That's how big or how powerful that song was. They backed it up with a ballad, right after that. And it was the ballad that made us, show that they were just not, a group that was just packaged together. They actually could really sing. And the song Get It Together is a wonderful slow song ballad that they came out with that went to the top of the charts. And they wrote both of those songs to having a gold album with their first record. Subsequently, they came up with a second album, which went platinum, with the hit song Where My Girls At, which is also tied into, where they're from, Las Vegas. More impact from the Missy Elliott, feel and type music and song for them. And again, like I said, they wrote it all the way to a platinum status with the second album. They eventually did come up with a third album, not as powerful as the first two, different singers, how they came across with that album. But what they gave us with those first two albums were very strong. And the Ladies from Las Vegas, called 702 is the reason why they came in at number 9 on our female soul, groups list. Now, a number 8 group are 3 lovely ladies out of Chi-Town, Chicago, otherwise known as Jade. And like the Jewel, they were very beautiful with great vocal arrangements and great songs. Now they started out after they were actually put together with a song that they recorded for the Kid and Play movie, Class Act soundtrack, or the movie Class Act, and they were on the soundtrack with a song called I Wanna Love You Down, which medium up the charts, top 20 kind of song. And it did well enough that the record label who put the soundtrack out, they rushed to try and record a record for these three ladies. Now, we've seen in the past, this happen where an artist comes out with one song, and when the label rushes to do a project, it doesn't come out that strong because it was so rushed. But that wasn't the case with this group, Jade, because their first single came out from the album Jade to the Max. And the song was called Don't Walk Away, which was big and went to the top of the R&B charts. It sold over 1 million units of the single with a great video done by Video Music Box out of New York, Ralph McDaniels and the guys. You people from New York know just how great a show that they were when they were exposing a lot of artists and their videos. And they were able to translate their show into doing a lot of music videos for artists. And a lot of videos that they did, a lot of people enjoyed for that 90s decade. So that video did so well, and it introduced us to Jade. Had some other great songs on the album. Looking for Mr. Do Right was also a chart topper. But two of the things that were so special about this record, because they had great vocal arrangements, is they wanted to show their dedication to the lady groups who came before them. And they did 2 emotion songs over on the record, Don't Ask My Neighbor and Bless It, and they killed it. Now, of course, the originals were great, so most people were gonna love the originals, but if you didn't get the first album, Jade to the Max, then you're missing out on their renditions of those 2 great emotion songs. Now, before their second record, hit the stores, they actually went and they did an album in between, which was the BET Listening Party. Now, the BET Listening Party was the answer to MTV with their TV show Unplugged, which gave us a couple of great CDs unplugged, the Jay-Z Unplugged, the Maxwell Unplugged. Even though it wasn't recorded CD, the LL Cool J MTV Unplugged is probably one of the greatest unplugs they ever did. So BET came up with their answer to that, which was the BET Listening Party, and they had groups that came in live and gave their renditions of other songs and their songs live. But out of all the ones that came in, Jade was the only one who actually recorded for a CD and put out on shelves, and it did very well, in between the 2 albums they came out with. Eventually they came out with that second album called Mind, Body, and Soul that went gold, and it had the hit song 5, 4, 3, 2, Your Time Is Up. And Every Day of the Week was also a big song off of that record. And they gave us some great vocals, and if you didn't buy the albums, get a chance to buy them and listen to them, because the album cuts, when you hear the vocal arrangements of their harmonies on these songs, you will be totally blown away by the group that came in number 8, Jade. And now arriving at number 7 on our countdown list is a group out of Philly by ways of Temple, the group called, or pronounced, Janae. Now, the 2 ladies weren't actually from Philadelphia. I believe Jersey and New York are the backgrounds for both of them, but they went to Temple as their school or their college, and that's where they met. And while they were there, they formed a group, and they were always singing at different shows and behind the scenes and doing a lot of things on the campus, and that was the thing that got them noticed by the Flavor Unit. Now, the Flavor Unit was the brainchild of Queen Latifah, and that was the moniker or the name of all the groups that were in her camp. Groups like Naughty by Nature, Black Sheep, to name a few, and then the group Janae. So when they decided to come up with their first album, the production of KG, which was one of the members of Naughty by Nature, was behind the sound with their songwriting and their vocals put together. Created a great mixture, and they gave us some great music. A lot of good mid-tempo, hot songs. Hey Mr. DJ was a song that led off, and that was the summer jam. You couldn't go anywhere without hearing that song playing on the radio, and it went to the top of the R&B charts. They followed up with Groove Thing. It's a funky thing, and that was, again, that mid-tempo just got you grooving, get your head bobbing, that's what they gave us with songs like that. And Sending My Love, which was right after that, along with another song, Vibe, and then one of my favorite songs off the first album, You're Sorry Now. Those 5 songs all charted, and it pushed that first album all the way to platinum status. They eventually came out with a second album, called Saturday Night, with the song called Saturday Night. And then one of my favorite songs off that album, only people who bought the record and paid attention to it really heard this song, a song called Rendezvous, which is a great jazz, R&B, powerful ballad that really showcases both their vocals on the song. And that's what they gave us. They gave us, the kind of, groove with actually some great, unique looking music videos that get you into what they were all about, their singing prowess and their power. And they gave us some great music during, the beginning of the decade of the 90s, which is why coming in at number 7 is the group called Janae. And now we find ourselves at the number 6 group, the group out of LA, otherwise known as Brownstone. Now, out of all the groups on this list, these 3 ladies, and eventually 4 ladies, are probably my favorite artists out of all the female groups that we'll hear today. I mean, their vocals were just incredible. Their harmonies are to die for. I could listen to their music over and over again. That's how strong the actual songs were. Now, they were the first group that was signed to the Michael Jackson created label, MJJ, under 550 Music, Sony Records. And they were able to not only sign them, but they gave them the autonomy to be who they are. Like, they didn't come out and just try to use Michael Jackson's name to push the group. They let their sound and their music do all the talking for them, and it spoke. With the first song, If You Love Me, Say It. If You Love Me, Prove It. And we definitely loved it because we ate that first album up, which went platinum status with all the records that we bought that we loved from that album. But that wasn't my favorite song. My favorite song was the second song off the album, which was called Grapevine. And that's a song I could listen to every day, and I wouldn't even be mad. I would love to hear that song every day. That's how great that song is. The vocal arrangement and the harmonies they have in all their songs. It was groundbreaking for the era. And they had some other great songs. They did the Eagles song over I Can't Tell You Why. Fruit of Life was another, chart success song that they had off their first album. And they just endeared themselves to us as soul music listeners. They eventually came out with a second album, Still Climbing, which had another song that I really love, 5 Miles to Empty. It just took a long time for that second album to come because one of the singers left the group and they had to find another singer to join the group, and it looked like they didn't skip a beat, because that song 5 Miles to Empty also went to the top of the charts. And then one of the unique songs off that second album where they did the song If You Play Your Cards Right, the Alicia Myers R&B song, they did that over and did a great job with that. So I would definitely tell you to go ahead and listen to, all the songs on both their albums, because you will be, it will be a pleasure for you. It'll be a joy, because the singing, again, like I said, the harmonies they came up with are to die for. That's how powerful they were. And unfortunately, we won't get a third record. As I know they're back, some of the members are back, touring, doing a little thing here and there. With what they gave us on those first two albums was so very special, which is the reason why coming at number 6 is the group called Brownstone. And coming in at number 5 is the group out of New Jersey, the group called Total. Now, this was Bad Boy / Puffy. This is their entry into the soul, female soul, race that was being put in the beginning of the 90s. And one thing you can say about Puffy, there's a lot of things you can say about him, but one of the things you can't say about him is really that he's not stupid. He knew that Notorious Big was his bread and butter. And he used him and his popularity and his success to help introduce all the other acts on the label, and to help them get over on us, that we would accept that artist. He did it with Mace. He did it with him because we never thought, Puffy was a rapper, but you put him with Biggie, we buy it up. Did it with the group 112, and then he did it with the female group called Total. With the first single, Can't You See, and Biggie's opening lyrics just sets the tone for the song, and we automatically, get attached to this group Total. Now, even though that song went to the top of the charts, they were able to finally break free from that first single that Biggie was on, and they showed that they were a group unto themselves. With the second single, No One Else, which also took off at the charts. And then they gave us the beautiful ballad, which with a great video that really locked them in and made us really love the group Total, which is a song called Kissing You. And those 3 singles took them all the way to platinum status on the first album. They came up with 2 more records after that, one of them going gold with the single called Tripping, which took that album to gold before they disbanded and went their own separate ways. But for the time period that they had, they were pretty strong, with the songs that they came out with, which is the reason why coming in at number 5 is the group called Total. And now our number 4 group are the 4 ladies out of Atlanta, the group called Escape. Now, this was So Def / Jermaine Dupri's entry into the water of which was the soul female renaissance of the 90s. That boy was pretty busy during the decade of the 90s, Jermaine Dupri, and he had a lot of success. And he had a lot of success with this group, Escape. They were, when they started out, they were young female, singers with a little hip hop look or sensitivity to them, but they had a great sound. And they had a single that went all the way to the top of the charts, Just Kicking It, which introduced them to the soul audience. They backed it up with a very beautiful ballad called Understanding, which took that album all the way to platinum status. But it was the second and third album which really did the impact, because what it did was it helped us to see them grow from young ladies unto grown ladies. With the second album, Off the Hook, with the platinum single Who Can I Run To, which went all the way up to platinum, and their third album, Traces of My Lipstick, with My Little Secret, The Softest Place on Earth. They had some very beautiful ballads that they came up with even on the third album, which showed their their strength as singers and their strength as a group, that they had grown from young ladies all the way to grown ladies, and they had so much power with sales, with 3 straight platinum records and chart toppers, which is the reason why coming in at number 4 is the group called Escape. Now coming in at number 3 is the ladies out of New York, SWV, otherwise known as Sisters with Voices. And they definitely have voices, and they had a lot of success. When they came out with their first album, It's About Time, they actually showcased the street sound, as well as the almost like a New Jack ballad sound on their first album, and they wrote all those hits all the way up to selling 3 million copies of that first album, with songs like Downtown, the song Weak that went all the way to number 1 at the charts. I'm So Into You was also a chart topper, and then they had the pleasant success of the song Right Here, which the original charted on the R&B charts, but then they did a remix featuring Michael Jackson's Human Nature, which went number 1 on the R&B charts. So the same song, the original and the remix, both charted on the R&B charts. Again, that rode it all the way up to 3 million copies. But it was the second album that actually helped them to introduce them to us as growing up from being the street sister with voices. They were just grown up ladies, singing, powerful songs. With the song New Beginnings that went platinum, they had the number 1 song, You Are the One, and then probably their best ballad and one of my favorite songs by them, Use Your Heart, with a beautiful video, wonderful song, could hear it over and over again, and that helped endear them to us. They had another album that came out, the third album, that went gold, which had the single Can We, which featured Missy Elliott. You see, she's on a couple of these albums, with these artists, helping them get to the top of the charts. But that was also a top of the chart song, Can We, by Missy. But Sisters with Voices, yeah, they definitely had it going on, and we loved them for it, which is the reason why coming at number 3 is the group SWV. And now the number 2 group on our list are the trendsetters for this whole list, which is the ladies predominantly out of Oakland, the group called In Vogue. The reason why we say predominantly out of Oakland are 2 reasons. The producers of the group In Vogue were out of Oakland, Foster and McElroy. They were, 2 guys who started in the group Club Nouveau. Remember groups, songs like Rumors and songs like they did with that group, and they left that group, to show their producing prowess. And one of the things they wanted to do is they wanted to find a ladies group that would, create a renaissance, similar to what Diana Ross and the Supremes did for the 60s. And so they actually had auditions to find the women, and they had, I believe, about 3,000 women showed up at the auditions. And when it was all said and done, 3 of them got chosen. The 4th one, so Cindy, Maxine, and Dawn were all the 3 that were chosen from the auditions. And then eventually Terry, who's actually from Houston, joined the 4th member. She was late to the auditions, but she actually made the group, which, solidified their sound. And then their group and their harmonies, wow, it just set the table. And like we said earlier in the video, that so many other artists, labels said we need to find our version of In Vogue, or to find our girls group, because this is going to be good if we get a good one. Now the first album, Born to Sing, yes, they were born to sing, and they started out with a song, Hold On, and they started out the video with that Jackson 5 song, who's loving you? You know, it gave us a little riff of that, at the beginning of the song, and it automatically endeared us to them. And that their first single went to #1 on the R&B and #2 at the pop charts. They eventually also had 2 other #1 songs on that first album, Lies and You Don't Have to Worry About a Thing. Another popular song, Don't Go, was on that first album. But for me, one of my favorite songs was almost like the bonus cut on that first album, which is a beautiful love song ballad called Waiting on You. And those of us who bought that record, you know about that song. But as great as that first album was, it sold 3 million records. It was the second record that made them historic. Funky Divas came out, and that first video and song, Never Gonna Get It, it tore up the charts. It tore up, just got everybody in this group, and it made them superstars, of the female genre, and even groups like Billboard listed them as one of the top 10 girl groups of all time. And this was a song that was the linchpin that got it showed, because they actually showed off the seductiveness, the sexiness, the beauty of all these 4 ladies, came fluid on all these songs that were on this album. Then they came back with the remake of the song Something He Can Feel, and the video was just, you saw the guys sweating in the video. That's the way everybody was sweating when they were watching this video, because it was just so great and so powerful watching them do their thing on that video. They had a couple of other songs that were big off the album. Free Your Mind and Give It Up, Turn It Loose were also big songs off that record. And they wrote all those #1 songs all the way up to 5 million copies on that second album. Just incredible what they were doing. They had a third album, but the third album wasn't as strong as it should have been, because that was the time when the group was starting to have issues with one another and wanted to go their own separate ways. So the third album only went platinum with a song called Don't Let Go, which was one of their biggest selling singles, actually, even though the album wasn't as big as the other ones. But in Vogue, they were the trendsetters. They were the ones that made it so that a lot of these other groups that we mentioned prior to, the reason why they got signed is because everybody was looking for the next In Vogue group. So we got to give mad love and props to these 4 beautiful, lovely ladies and what they did, not only for the genre and also for soul music and for the ladies, but also what they gave us musically. And that's the reason why coming in at #2 is the group called In Vogue. And now we finally find ourselves at the top of the charts, the #1 group on our female soul groups of the 90s list. And this group is the group out of Atlanta and also a little Philly, the group called TLC. Tender Love and Care is what they gave us, but the 3 letters stand for Chili, Left Eye, and T-Boz. And they were a group that found their way, working the circuit, down Atlanta, trying to make their bones or make their way through. And they were partially discovered by the artist Pebbles, who used her influence to help get them signed and get them, put out as an artist in a group. Now, what they gave us was something so very special, because they came up with an album called Ooh on the Ooh tip, on the TLC tip, and they wrote that album. That album sold 4 million copies, leading off with the lead single "Ain't Too Proud to Beg," which gave us that soul feel, but also gave us, which was popular at the time, a mixture of hip hop and New Jack Swing, all mixed up into one, with them as young ladies giving that sound. Ain't Too Proud to Beg went to the top of the charts. They followed it up with a nice and a lovely ballad called Baby, 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 And then a couple more songs that were popular off the album, which was What About My Friends and Hat to the Back, which were also, chart top, type songs. And so they had a lot of success with the first album, but it was really the second album that, like what happened with In Vogue, the second album is what made them historic. Because when Crazy Sexy Cool came out, which was the definition of all, three ladies, Crazy was Left Eye, Sexy was T-Boz, and Cool was Chili. They came out with the first song, Creep, and they went from being young ladies to beautiful women right before our eyes, and they just won our hearts with that song, Creep. The video and the song, which went #1 to the top of the charts. Then they got even sexier, with the next single, which was riskier, if that's a word, called Red Light Special. That also went to the top of the charts. Digging on You was another hit song off that record, but the special song off that, song, which also was maybe one of the most groundbreaking videos of all time, was a song called Waterfalls. And what that did and what they gave us, that set them ablaze. That set them apart from all the other female groups of the era. They rode all those songs to selling over 12 million copies of Crazy Sexy Cool. And that's the wonderful thing about TLC, is that even though In Vogue may have been the ones that lit the match and started the fire and got, people and artists wanting to sign all the female groups, the biggest benefactor was TLC, because they are the all-time best-selling female group, of all time. That's how strong TLC, sold. So how many records they sold worldwide. Well, actually, they're one of the top 2 or 3. There's a couple groups that have sold a little bit more worldwide, than them. But nevertheless, they were so powerful with that. They had a third album during the decade, Fan Mail, which had the hit song No Scrubs, which was one of those songs that also became, a part of our urban lexicon. So you didn't want to be the guy sitting in your best friend's ride, because you were being defined as a scrub. And that record sold 6 million copies, which was very big, very strong for them. And over the time period of selling so many records, they were also nominated and won 4 Grammys over that period of time. And their success was just, way beyond what all the other groups, done. I mean, you can actually even put together the sales of most of the groups on this list, and it wouldn't even come close to how many records TLC sold. That's how big they were, at the cash register and selling records over the time period of the 90s. And that's the reason why coming in at #1 on our female soul groups of the 90s list, the group called TLC. Well, here we are, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of another show of Elevation. And as we took a look back into the 90s, to just pull out some of the names and some of the artists and some of the people involved in the best, female groups, soul groups of the 90s. We saw everything from duets to 3 ladies to quartets, ones that had great ballads, ones that had hip-hop sensitivities, New Jack Swing flavors. We had ones that were just beautiful the way they dressed, groundbreaking videos that just, set the table. We had so many powerful women during the decade of the 90s doing music, and That's why we wanted to take a look and just highlight and just spotlight and tell them we say thank you for the music that you gave us, you know, and the style and the professionalism and the beauty that you also gave us during this decade. We thank you, all the groups that got mentioned, some of the ones that didn't make the list, as well as the ones that made the list. We thank you so very much. And we also thank you, listener and viewer, for tuning in to another episode of Elevation. As we continue to give you more shows that highlight, you know, countdowns of some of the artists and some of the music that we enjoy. We hope and pray that you enjoy what we gave you today. So when after you get finished watching the video, hey, take a little time in the comments. Tell us what you think about it, good, bad, and different. If there's a group that we forgot, would you like to see the list in a different way? Would you have somebody else, 1, 2, 3, whatever? Let us know. Make those comments. Like the video, share it with friends, tell them to check it out. And after you do all that, make sure you subscribe to the channel Euphoria Media, so you can stay abreast of all the other videos and content that we put together and put out, because we want to share, you know, our ideas and our visions with you, and also give us ideas that you want to see us do, and that's what we want to bring to the forefront. So with this episode of Elevation, again, we thank you for tuning in, and we hope and pray that we elevated the conversation, we elevated your mind, we elevated your soul, and we elevated your spirit.